The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the baby formula aisle of Peterson's grocery on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Sarah Mitchell sat on the polished floor, her 18-month-old daughter Emma nestled in her lap, both of them looking up at a man in a tailored gray suit. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she held the canister of formula. She'd been caught trying to slip into her worn canvas bag. The man crouched down to their level, his dark hair perfectly styled, his watch catching the light. But his eyes, those were what Sarah noticed most. They held no judgment, only a quiet recognition that made her heart catch in her throat. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "She's hungry and I just didn't know what else to do." David Chen studied the young woman before him. Her blonde hair was clean but tangled, pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her sweater, though worn thin at the elbows, was neatly kept. The little girl in her arms had bright, curious eyes and cheeks that should have been fuller. These were people trying their best with what little they had. "What's your daughter's name?" David asked gently. "Emma," Sarah replied, instinctively holding her child a little closer. David smiled at the toddler, who responded with a shy grin. "She's beautiful." He paused, then said, "I'm not going to call security, Sarah, but I am going to buy you that formula and whatever else you need." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand. I can't pay you back. I don't have anything. I don't even have a home right now." "I don't expect you to pay me back," David said quietly. He sat down fully on the floor beside them, his expensive suit wrinkling without concern. "You see, someone once helped me when I had nothing. I think it's time I passed that forward." There was something in his voice, a familiarity that made Sarah look at him more closely, the shape of his face, the gentle way he spoke. Her breath caught. "David?" she whispered. "David Chen?" Now it was his turn to look surprised. He studied her face more carefully, and suddenly the years fell away. "Sarah? Sarah Mitchell from Metro City Hospital?" She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "You remember me?" "Remember you?" David's voice grew thick with emotion. "Sarah, you saved my life." It had been 15 years ago. David had been 22, fresh off the bus from Chicago, with nothing but a duffel bag, and dreams of making something of himself. Within 2 months, those dreams had crashed into the harsh reality of a city that didn't care about another. Hopeful kid with no connections and no money. He'd collapsed on a sidewalk near Metro City Hospital, 3 days without food, dizzy and weak. A young nurse finishing her shift had found him. Sarah had been 25 then, just a few years into her nursing career. She hadn't walked past him like so many others. She'd stopped, checked his pulse, and helped him to his feet. "You're severely dehydrated and malnourished," she'd told him firmly. "Come with me." She'd taken him to the hospital cafeteria, bought him a meal with her own money, and sat with him while he ate. Then she'd done something extraordinary. She'd taken him to her small apartment, given him her couch for 2 weeks, and helped him find a job at a local warehouse. "You have intelligence in your eyes," she'd told him one evening. "You just need a chance to show it." She'd encouraged him to take night classes. She'd proofread his first business proposal. She'd believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. And when he finally got that first break, a junior position at a tech startup, she'd celebrated with him as if it were her own victory. Over the years, as David climbed from that junior position to senior management, and eventually started his own company, he'd lost touch with Sarah. He'd sent her letters, tried to find her, but she'd moved and left no forwarding address. He'd never stopped being grateful. He'd never forgotten her kindness. Now sitting on the grocery store floor, David looked at the woman who'd changed his life and saw how much their positions had reversed. "What happened, Sarah?" he asked softly. She took a slow breath. "After you left, I continued nursing for years. I loved it. Then I met Emma's father. We married, I got pregnant, and everything seemed perfect." She paused, her hand gently stroking her daughter's soft hair. "But he changed. The drinking got worse, and then the anger. I had to leave for Emma's safety. The divorce took everything. I lost my job during the custody battle because I couldn't focus. Couldn't keep my shifts straight. My parents passed away years ago. I have a sister, but she's overseas. I've been staying at a shelter. But there's a waiting list for the better programs. And in the meantime, you don't have to explain," David said. You don't have to justify your situation to me or anyone. He stood up and offered his hand to help her to her feet. Emma reached out her small arms toward him, and without hesitation he lifted the little girl, settling her on his hip as naturally as if he'd done it 100 times before. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you both what you need." For the next hour, David pushed a shopping cart through the store while Sarah, hesitant at first, began selecting items. Formula, diapers, baby food. He insisted on more. Warm clothes for Emma, a winter coat for Sarah, toiletries, nutritious food. At the checkout, when the total came to nearly $400, Sarah tried to protest, but David simply shook his head. "Sarah, you gave me more than money 15 years ago. You gave me dignity when I had none. You saw a person worth saving when everyone else saw a problem to avoid." He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Let me return the favor, please." In the parking lot, David loaded the bags into his car, a modest sedan. Not the flashy luxury vehicle one might expect of a CEO. Success hadn't made him ostentatious. It had made him more grateful. "Where are you staying?" he asked. Sarah gave him the address of the shelter. David nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to help you more if you'll let me. I have a friend who runs an apartment complex. Good, safe buildings. She keeps a few units for people in transition. I'll call her tonight. And my company has an excellent daycare program for employees. We're actually looking for someone with medical knowledge to help run our wellness program. It's not nursing exactly, but—" "David, stop!" Sarah interrupted, tears flowing freely now. "You don't have to do all this." "I know I don't have to," he said. "I want to. You didn't have to help me either, all those years ago. But you did. And not because you expected anything in return. You did it because you saw someone who needed help, and you had the power to give it." He smiled. "Besides, I learned from the best. Everything I am today started with your kindness." Emma, who had been quietly observing from her mother's arms, suddenly reached out and patted David's cheek with her small hand. Both adults laughed and some of the tension melted away. "You know what I learned building my company?" David said as he opened the car door for them. "Success isn't measured in profits or achievements. It's measured in how many hands you reach down to help up. You taught me that, Sarah. You showed me that one person's kindness can change everything." 3 months later, Sarah stood at the window of her new apartment. Nothing fancy, but clean, safe, and warm. Emma was napping in her own small bedroom, her belly full, her future secure. Sarah had started her new job the week before, coordinating health and wellness initiatives for David's company. The work was fulfilling, and the daycare had been a blessing. David visited sometimes, always calling first, always respectful. He'd become like family, an older brother or a dear friend. He'd introduced her to his wife, Jennifer, a kind woman who worked as a teacher. They'd had Sarah and Emma over for dinner several times. But what touched Sarah most was seeing who David had become. He'd started a foundation that helped homeless individuals get job training and housing. He'd told her it was because of her, because she'd shown him that everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. One evening, as they sat on her small balcony watching the sunset while Emma played with blocks on a blanket, David said, "I've been thinking about that day in the grocery store." "Me too," Sarah admitted. "I was so ashamed." "Please don't be," David said quickly. "You were doing what any loving mother would do, trying to care for your child. There's no shame in that." He paused. "But I've been thinking about what it means. That moment when our paths crossed again. Some people would call it coincidence. I think it was something more. I think it was life's way of completing a circle." Sarah smiled. "Maybe it's life's way of reminding us that we're all connected. That kindness isn't a transaction. It's a gift that keeps moving forward." "Exactly," David agreed. "You didn't help me expecting anything in return. And I'm not helping you expecting repayment. We're just passing it on. Each of us trying to leave the world a little better than we found it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Sarah realized something profound. She'd spent weeks feeling like a failure, ashamed of her circumstances, broken by her struggles. But in David's eyes and in his actions, she saw a different truth. Her worth had never been tied to her circumstances. The kindness she'd shown all those years ago hadn't been diminished by her current struggles. If anything, her ability to remain gentle and loving toward Emma even in the hardest times, proved the strength of her character. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything?" "Thank you," David replied. "For teaching me what really matters. For being the kind of person who stops to help someone in need. For showing me that true wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give away." Emma toddled over and climbed into Sarah's lap, then reached out for David's hand. The three of them sat together as the stars began to appear, a small circle of kindness that had somehow beautifully come full around. In that moment, Sarah understood that life's greatest treasures aren't found in what we accumulate, but in the connections we make and the compassion we share. She'd thought she'd lost everything, but really, she'd simply been preparing for a new beginning, one built on the foundation of kindness that she and David had laid years before, now blooming into something neither could have imagined. The circle of kindness was complete, but it wasn't ending. It was simply expanding, ready to touch more lives, inspire more generosity, and remind everyone it reached that we're all just one act of compassion away from changing someone's world.